Good day, viewers. Welcome to a new edition of 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television with me, Manir Dan Ali. Our guest actually used to sit on this chair to present his own program on this station, but today he is a guest of 30 Minutes. I'm talking about Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, a professor of political science and activist in a sense. And he's here actually as part of that activism because he and a number of other professors, including Professor Attahiru Jega, Professor Sadiq Abubakar, Dr. Kabir Chafe, and a number of others, non-professors, signed a document, an open letter to President Tinubu, calling on the president not to agree to have any foreign troops, specifically US or French, on Nigerian soil. Professor, what's the basis of this call? Have you seen moves by the Nigerian authorities to endorse this position?
Well, it's a story we've been following very closely since the crisis developed in West Africa and the French were chased out of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And they said they will not be chased out, but they were gradually forced out. After that, the Americans were chased out, are now being chased out of Niger. So between France and the United States, they have 2,600 troops in Niger only that have to move out. And there's an issue of where they will relocate them. The Americans have their largest drone base in the world in Agadez, which is in northern Niger, and now they've been told to pack out. So we have seen moves by the Americans to come to the Gulf of Guinea and talk to countries to renegotiate a new base deal that will allow them move their troops. Specifically, we have information that they are discussing with the Côte d'Ivoire, and this week's Jeune Afrique has a special revelation on that.
Yes, Jeune Afrique, the magazine.
Yes, the magazine, yeah. Then there have been...
But Nigeria hasn't been mentioned so far.
Yes, I'm coming. Then they've been talking to the Ghanaians. We know that because there was a motion in the parliament in Ghana on the matter. And we do have reports that they've been talking to Nigeria. We don't have information whether they've reached an agreement or whether the Nigerian government has accepted whatever proposals are being made, but we know they have reached out to Nigeria.
Is it through back channels or to direct officials of the Nigerian government?
Back channels, because we've been talking to people in and out of government, and we've been told for sure that these moves are ongoing, but they hadn't reached a conclusion. And we thought that this was really the best time to send out a precautionary warning that if that's the line you are thinking, please retract from that path. It's not a path that's good for Nigeria.
But there may be Nigerians who may welcome such move because they could see it in a way that Nigeria is cozying up to one of the big superpowers in the world, America, and maybe also an alternative superpower, France.
Well, I know some Nigerians have actually made the argument that these countries will help us on the war against terrorism, and Nigeria is really suffering from terrorism, both the Boko Haram dimension, but also what we've called bandit terrorism in Northwest, in addition to other forms of violence perpetrated by various groups in the country. So that argument has been made, but I think here we have to do comparative analysis. In Niger, the base has been operating for 12 years. In that 12 years, the government of Niger said the Americans never shared any intelligence with them, never gave them any advice on attacks. targeted at Niger soldiers. There was the point in having all this sophisticated surveillance and drones that's mapping everything in the country, and the government, the host government itself, is never given any of this intelligence for its own use.
But shouldn't we take that with a pinch of salt coming from the present military junta, so to say, that is trying to justify itself among Nigerian citizens as a very nationalist-oriented government that wants all foreign interests out? So, because the previous government that negotiated the Americans' presence in Agadez didn't have similar concerns.
Well, you see, what's important about what's happened in Niger, the military junta may have their reasons for doing that, but they published the agreement, and it has the details of everything. And it's those details that are actually frightening in terms of their content. Because the first element that we found concerning about the agreement is that the personnel coming into the country, the host country is not even allowed to see a list of those coming in. So the country doesn't know who they are.
Like the operatives of the base, people who will be stationed at those bases.
Exactly. Like in the case of Nigeria, talking of 1,100 persons, that's a lot, and you don't have a list of who those people are. The equipment that are brought in, the host country has no right to know what those equipments are, what they are composed of, and what they are brought to do. The host government also has no right to enter the base. So it's a complete sovereign area for the American government without even the politeness of letting our host countries know these are the people who are brought in and this is the work they will be doing.
But it's more or less like an embassy, because you have almost a similar arrangement with embassies of different countries that are based in a particular country.
And that's our cause of concern. Every country has an embassy, and there are a few dozen diplomats in the embassy that have the benefits of the Geneva Convention. Every country accepts that that happens. But now you are going to bring thousands of soldiers and giving each of them that same diplomatic protection embassy staff have. I think that's excessive.
So what has been the reaction of the Nigerian government since the publication of open letter, now that it's been a number of days since it was published?
Well, we haven't had any response yet. We sent a copy to the president. We sent another copy to the leadership of the National Assembly and to each legislator. And we are hoping that we'll get some feedback this week. We are reaching out to our contacts to see if we'll get feedback as quickly as possible. Our aim in all this is to hopefully get a chance of accessing government and making our case that if this is the line you are thinking about, please, it's the wrong line to follow. Think otherwise.
But won't the government say, well, not after publicizing the matter, you should have come quietly and whispered to our ears instead of making a big deal out of it?
We thought about that, and then we realized government really never listens except if there is a reason for them to listen. And usually the reason for them to listen is that citizens are concerned and agitated about something. If you just send a quiet letter, first of all, nobody will read it in government. So they wouldn't even know what's the content. But now there's so many Nigerians, and we've had reactions from hundreds and hundreds of people who have read the letter, who are concerned about the letter, and who are encouraging us to go ahead, and also encouraging us to reach out to government to get them to have a discussion on hopefully an agreement that Nigeria will not cross that red line of accepting foreign military bases.
But you still have friends in government whom you could talk to in an informal basis. Why didn't you consider that as an option as well?
We did try to reach out, but there's a problem with issues such as this, which is that these are, we know the American tradition. They talk to the president. We know the French tradition. They talk to the president. So you can reach out to friends in government, but they are not at that position where they can be important in terms of what determination is made on the matter. But by making it a public issue and by getting citizens involved, then the president gets to hear about it from citizens and picks an interest, because if this is one of the things Nigerians are all talking about, then it's something that's worth looking at. So it's a tactical approach we've taken that we think has the most efficacy.
But didn't you also consider that this particular president, that's President Bola Tinubu, seems to be close to the French authorities, or at least some French interest? Even as we speak, there are rumors as to whether he's in London or in France. Don't you think that that relationship could also come into play when a decision is being made on this matter?
Well, the Nigerian president may have relations with the French president and French personalities, but what we are talking about is the vital interest of Nigeria. And whatever his relationship are with France and with the French, that should not allow him to take a decision that will be harmful to Nigeria. And that's why we want to make the point that if we accept this proposed deal, it will only do harm to Nigeria. And the responsibility and the charge of a Nigerian president is to protect Nigeria and not allow for a situation where the country will suffer from harm.
And are you going to engage with members of, say, the National Assembly, who are a critical factor in all this? Anything of this nature, I suspect, can't be done without the endorsement of the National Assembly. Is that part of your
That's definitely
plan?
Part of our plan. But we also had a concern in the case of Niger, for example. The Americans insisted that the agreement shouldn't be taken to the National Assembly. And former members of the National Assembly did make the point that they were not at all aware of the content. So there is always a risk that it may not get there. Our own constitution is clear. A decision such as this that involves a treaty with a foreign power must go to the National Assembly. But you never know. Sometimes they may forget to take it there. And we want to make sure that members of the National Assembly also are aware of this possibility, will keep their eyes open, and ensure that if there's any such plan that comes to their attention, they will join in making sure we don't go that path of abandoning a part of our sovereignty.
What about the securocrats? That's the bureaucracy in the security sector. Have you reached out to them, and is it your sense that they are likely to be swayed by your arguments?
I think they are likely to be swayed by our arguments. One of the good things about the securocrats, as you call them, is that they actually read what we write, and because it's part of their duties to look at what concerned Nigerians are saying to government and to other Nigerians. So we believe they read it, and like I said, during the course of this week, we are reaching out to as many of them as we can to get them essentially to join this national crusade. You recall that when the Americans proposed a similar agreement in 2001, it wasn't taken to the National Assembly. It was General Malu, who was then the head of the army, that told President Obasanjo that Nigeria has a tradition of neutrality in these matters. We're a country that has always been non-aligned, and it is wrong for the Nigerian government to sign a deal that involves a military accord with a foreign nation. So they themselves expressed their concern, and it was the concern of the Nigerian military that persuaded President Obasanjo at that time to withdraw from the deal. So I do hope the Nigerian security services are as concerned about this issue as we are, and that they are taking up the issue with the president that please don't follow this path.
I would want us to examine in a bit more detail, especially this history you've started touching on, something similar that happened in the past under the watch of President Olusegun Obasanjo, and we'll do that when we come back from this short break. Viewers, it is 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television, and our guest today is Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, an activist professor of political science in Nigeria.
This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. It is 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television, and our guest today is Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, with whom we are exploring the issue of the possibility of American or French bases being considered in Nigeria. Professor, before we went on the short break, you were going down the memory lane and kind of reminding us of history of something similar that almost happened but didn't happen under the watch of President Olusegun Obasanjo. But much earlier than that, in the First Republic, I believe students and other Nigerians were up in arms against, is it the Anglo-Nigeria Defense Pact? Can you expatiate on that so as people will understand more of where you are coming from?
Well, I think the general situation since the end of the Second World War is that the United States has considered itself the hegemon of the world and wants to have its controlling tentacles in as many countries as possible. And therefore, they've had this tradition for a very long time of establishing military bases. And in this work, they've cooperated closely with the British. In terms of our own history, it was in 1962 that the United Kingdom proposed this Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact that will involve setting up military bases for the British Air Force in particular to operate in the country. That was just 2 years after independence. And Nigerian students at that time heard about the deal and mobilized very effectively and succeeded in stopping it. And the problem was they were asking the Balewa government at that time. We struggled for 30 years as a nationalist movement to get rid of British imperialism in this country. And 2 years later, you want to bring them back and their armed forces to give them a base in our country so that they will do what they want to do? That was the argument, that if we have engaged in the struggle for independence and we've succeeded in becoming independent, then we must protect that independence.
But for many younger people who are born much later than that period, they do not connect with all these nationalist favors. They will say, okay, what is in it for us? How has national independence helped to improve my lot? As you know very well now, there is the Japa syndrome. A lot of Nigerians are voting with their feet, educated, even non-educated ones, out of Nigeria. So can nationalism fill the stomach? Can it quench their hunger? Is it enough to just be nationalistic when the national leadership doesn't seem to be inspiring a lot of confidence or achievement?
I think the first core argument is that freedom is a value that all human beings love. And that even if in certain situations people will think of a trade-off, that if you propose something that takes my freedom, what are you giving me in return? Is that thing better? That happens in all societies. But there's the first issue of the core value of freedom. And I think for people in my generation who were born before independence, we take it as a given. Many young people may not have that passionate relationship with the struggle for independence. But what I do know about Nigerians is that they are proud of being Nigerians. We always complain about bad governance in our country, but we complain about bad governance because we want good governance and we want to be proud of our country and we want to see it do well and get laurels all over the world. That's the reason we criticize our government a lot. And my feeling is that sense of pride in Nigeria still exists. But the final point I want to make on this is, well, what's the trade-off? What is it that we get in return for offering a part of our sovereignty to a foreign country?
Maybe the details will be worked out if Nigeria bites the idea.
Well, you then do the way out to find out whether that could happen is to do comparative analysis. Is there any country that has genuinely benefited with these foreign bases in their country? We haven't seen any. And the way in which these agreements are structured always gives all privileges to the Americans and no right of regard to the host country, which means that the possibility of a give and take is removed from the equation. And if there is no give and take in the equation, then it cannot be in our interests.
All this is happening against the background of the turmoil that has happened, especially in 2023 in the Sahel, where you have Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and possibly others that are under military rule now. ECOWAS has come down from its high horse, but it doesn't appear as if Niger, Mali, and others are even considering like a rapprochement. What exactly is going on? Why the radio silence, especially from the Nigerians who are our brothers and our neighbors?
Well, the Nigerians are very hot. They are very upset that Nigeria, a country with which they've had a very close relationship for a very long time, will be part of those countries that will consider military attack and invasion of their country, especially after the role they played during the civil war in this country, where France put a lot of pressure on them to join the Biafran side, and their government said, we will stand with one Nigeria and we will help one Nigeria. And they were really a very positive force for Nigeria winning the Biafran war. So that was the memories that came back to them when Nigeria started saying we are going to invade Niger and remove the military from power.
But Nigeria and other ECOWAS countries have since moved on. They've come down on their position, but the Nigerians have been quiet.
You see, in international diplomacy, when you issue a threat and you can't back up your threat, you lose face, you lose force. And that's what happened. Nigeria was part of the countries that threatened to use force against them. They called a bluff. They say, we are ready for you, come. And Nigeria and other West African countries realized they didn't have the logistical capacity to do it. So we made basically a strategic error, a blunder that we are now paying the price for. And that's why we are very concerned about what's going on now. If after that strategic error, we now say, okay, the Americans have been chased out of Niger, so we bring them here, and we give them a base in northern Nigeria near the border with Niger, that will be deepening the divide between Nigeria and Niger, and as well as the other countries. And rather than looking for a solution to the strategic error already committed, we are worsening the situation. And that's why we feel that at any time it's a bad idea. But at this particular time, with the crisis in ECOWAS and the sub-region, is definitely not the time to consider accepting such bases to be established.
So given the historical background about the Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact and the way student protests quashed it, is mobilizing students and other Nigerians part of your strategy going forward to make the government, make the Nigerian authorities understand the seriousness of the matter as you are underlining it now?
Well, our strategy is actually to mobilize the entire Nigerian population. And over the past 2 days, we have launched a petition campaign where we are collecting signatories of Nigerians. Go to change.org and you will see our petition there, and we call on all Nigerians to sign up to make the point that it's the entire Nigerian nation, the citizens of this country, that feel concerned about this possibility of a defense pact, and that we should all mobilize and ensure that we don't go along that path.
Thank you very much, Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, for elucidating your position.
It's a pleasure.
That's the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Keep a date with us.